Gods and Warlock patrons are way more than flavor text. They can shape entire campaigns, drive your players' decisions, and change the way the world feels at your table. But the problem, most dungeon masters aren't sure how to roleplay them without either making them feel like regular NPCs or, maybe worse, a plot device that steals the spotlight from your players. So today, we're going to talk about how to play gods and patrons in a way that feels true to the game, true to the lore, and make it fun for your players. We'll look at the big differences between gods and patrons and how they should communicate, how to give them personality, and what to do if one of them will actually intervene in your campaign, if you so choose, or if they cause it. If you ever wondered how to roleplay a god that feels divine, or a patron that really feels like they're pulling the strings, this is your guide. Let's jump in. So why should you even bother role-playing gods and warlock patrons in your game? Isn't it enough that they're written on the character sheet, tucked away into the character's backstory? Well, the thing is, gods and patrons are built into D&D for a reason. They're not just lore dressing, they're story engines. When you lean into them, they give you a way to connect a character's personal story to the larger world. For example, a cleric's faith isn't just a spell-casting mechanic. It is a relationship. Their prayers, their oaths, and their choices in this world all reflect what their god represents. The same will go for a paladin, who might find their ideals tested when their god's will clashes with, well, their own. Warlocks take that idea and turn it up to 11. Their patron isn't distant, it's personal, it's transactional. That relationship can become a constant tug of war between what the patron demands and what the warlock actually wants. From a DM's point of view, this is pure gold. You suddenly have a built-in way to hand out story hooks that feel very personal. They can put moral pressure on the characters without railroading and make the world feel bigger, older, and even more alive. So when you roleplay gods and patrons well, they stop being static names in a book and start becoming active forces that shape the direction of a campaign. And the best part is, you don't even need to overuse them. A single dream omen, a cryptic word from a patron can shift an entire adventure. This is one of my favorite trees. Now, one of the biggest mistakes a dungeon master can make is role-playing a god like they're just another character. Gods aren't merchants or bandits or tavern owners with more hit points. They're embodiments of ideals: justice, chaos, death, life, knowledge, war. The DM's guide makes it clear gods don't usually step into the world directly. They act through omens, visions, and agents. That's because a god's presence isn't meant to feel casual. It's meant to feel awe-inspiring, mysterious, and maybe even terrifying. So when you roleplay a god, you should think more about how they would represent their ideal and how they might speak. A god of knowledge might reveal themselves in a dream full of symbols, riddles, or strange flashes of insight. A god of storms might answer a prayer with thunder that rattles the windows. You don't need dialogue for the players to feel like their god has spoken. And if you do have them speak, make it rare. Make it powerful. Their words should feel absolute, short, symbolic, and unforgettable. The kind of thing the players write down in their notes and debate about for 3 sessions afterwards. The less often you let a god talk, the more impact it has when you finally have them do it. I apologize for any noise back here. There's a bunch of crows fighting with some ravens or something. I don't know. Where gods are big, distant, and slow to act, your patrons are the opposite. They're personal, involved, and they've got a stake in what happens in the day-to-day. A patron isn't some abstract cosmic force. They're more like a boss, a business partner, or even a manipulative family member. They want things, they make deals, and they expect results. But the thing is, you can't let a patron take away a player's agency. It's very easy to fall into that trap. The patron isn't playing the warlock. The player is. Your job is to put pressure on the table, to dangle those temptations and to show consequences. The tension comes from the choices the player makes in response. So think of it this way. A patron might say something like, "Burn down a shrine, this shrine right here, and I'll reward you." But they shouldn't say, burn down the shrine, or else your character is no longer a warlock. That first example gives the player a decision. Do they do it? Do they reap the benefits, or refuse and deal with the fallout? That's where a story can live. Instead of forcing those actions, use consequences. A defiant warlock might find their powers weakened for a time, or maybe the patron sends a messenger to apply that pressure directly. It's still dramatic, but the choice is always in the player's hands. And finally, you should keep those goals open-ended. A patron might want more influence in, say, in a city. How that warlock goes about that through politics, intimidation, or maybe building alliances. Well, that's all to the players. Handled this way, a patron becomes one of the richest storytelling tools in your campaign. They can create tension, drama, and intrigue without ever robbing a player of their freedom. One of the biggest ways gods and patrons feel different is, well, how they communicate. A god usually speaks in ways that reminds the characters and the players that they're not ordinary. That might mean a dream, a sudden omen, a vision, or an agent delivering a cryptic message. It doesn't have to be flashy, and it shouldn't solve problems for the players. Even a single symbol on a wall or an unnatural weather pattern can feel like a very direct message from a god. Patrons, on the other hand, are more hands-on. They can reach out to their warlocks in whispers, visions, strange sensations, or even the conversations that, feel almost casual. If you can call a fiend whispering in your ear casual. Patrons want responses, and they want influence over, your choices. That makes them perfect for constant tension in a campaign. The key principle from the official rules is this: never over-explain. Whether it's a god, it could be a patron, leaving mystery, keeps players engaged. A dream from a god shouldn't spell out the solution. It should hint, confuse, and inspire. A patron shouldn't give clear instructions every single time. It should pull the player in unexpected directions. Say, a god might answer a prayer with a vision of a crumbling temple, leaving players to interpret what that might mean. A patron might appear in a reflection, speak one sentence, then vanish, leaving the warlock wondering what they really meant. By varying the style, frequency, and clarity of that communication, you can make your world feel alive and your divine or fiendish forces feel real instead of just mechanics on a character sheet. So when you roleplay gods and patrons, tone is everything. It's what separates a memorable divine encounter from a boring exposition dump. For gods, think alien, timeless, absolute. Their words are few, but they carry weight. A god of war isn't going to chat about the weather. They'll issue a command, give a warning, or reveal a symbol that hints at a larger conflict. A god of knowledge may communicate entirely through visions, strange riddles, or inexplicable insight. The goal is to make the players feel small, and to reinforce that these beings operate on a scale far beyond them. Patrons, in that contrast, are often more personable, quirky, and manipulative. They can be charming, threatening, cryptic, downright unsettling at times. Patrons are allowed to break the rules of reality in ways a god typically wouldn't. Whispering through shadows, appearing in a dream that lasts for hours, in only a few minutes of real time, or leaving cryptic items for a warlock to find. Every god or patron should have a recognizable style. A trickster god always leaves a puzzle. A fiendish patron always demands obedience in unexpected ways. Use rare words, strange signs, and indirect guidance. Make those interactions, feel significant. And a god's message might be subtle and symbolic. A patron's might be loud and sudden or deeply personal. The biggest takeaway is this: your style should reflect the entity's nature, not your desire to explain the plot. When you do it right, even a single line of dialogue, a simple vision, or a small sign can be more memorable than hours of combat or treasure hunting. One of the biggest questions for a game master is, what do you do if a god actually steps into the game? And the answer is, carefully. The official rules make it clear that direct divine intervention should be rare and momentous. In 5e, even Cleric's divine intervention feature reminds us that the odds of a god acting on demand are intentionally low. It's actually happened 3 times on my table. Wild. But that's because the god swoops in and solves the problem. It can undo tension, remove player agency, and make the story feel less like the character's journey and more like a spectacle. So, how do you handle it? First, you should think scale and impact. If a god intervenes, it should be world-shaking. Weather changes, massive visions, or an avatar appearing. Even small signs should feel like part of something bigger. Players should feel awe and uncertainty, or fear, not just, hey, the problem's solved. Second, never remove that player agency. Gods are guides, testers, and influencers, not babysitters. If a god intervenes in combat, for example, it might offer a cryptic warning that changes your strategy. Send an agent or summon a temporary ally to assist, but not to win the fight for them. Create those obstacles or choices that reflect the god's will. Rather than clear solutions. Third, consider consequences. Direct divine intervention should ripple outward. Other gods may notice, rival factions react, or the balance of power in the world shifts. That makes every intervention feel like a big deal, not just a freebie for the players to throw around. Finally, remember that tone. A lawful good god will intervene differently than the chaotic or trickster god. The method, style, and frequency of intervention should reflect that entity's nature and not your plot needs. So basically, in short, godly intervention is a storytelling tool, not a crutch. Use it rarely, make it powerful, and make it feel like the world itself has changed. Now, once you know how to roleplay gods and patrons, and you get a handle on that, the next challenge is making it sustainable. The last thing you want is for a divine or patron interactions to lose impact because they happen way too often, or worse, start overshadowing your players. First, less is more. Gods and patrons should punctuate the story, not dominate it. A single cryptic message, an unexpected dream, or a rare intervention can have far more impact than those constant contact. This keeps encounters with them feeling special, and it makes players pay attention whenever they appear. 2. Escalate it gradually. Early in the campaign, a patron might just leave mysterious tokens or subtle nudges. A god might send omens that inspire a vision. Later, as characters grow in power and as story stakes rise, interventions can become more direct, but always in a way that feels earned. Third, tie them to player choices. The more players feel that their actions influence the gods or patrons, the more engaging their interactions become. Let decisions, moral choices, and even mistakes shape how those entities respond, and that will keep your campaign dynamic rather than feeling like a series of scripted messages. And finally, try to stay consistent with tone and personality. Every god, patron has a style. Keeping it consistent, whether it could be a god who speaks in riddles or a patron who's mischievous and capricious. Make them believable and memorable, as best you can. Pace those interactions, escalate them thoughtfully, and link them to your players' choices. You can use gods and patrons as a powerful storytelling tool for an entire campaign, even overlapping campaigns, without ever undermining your player agency or the drama to your story. So there you have it. Gods and Warlock patrons. They aren't some background lore. They're some of the most powerful storytelling tools a Dungeon Master has. When you roleplay them correctly, you give your players a sense of awe, mystery, and consequence that few other elements in tabletop D&D can provide. So try to remember the key points. Gods are ideals made flesh, distant, awe-inspiring, and rare in their interventions. Patrons are personal, transactional, and unpredictable at times, giving you a way to constantly challenge your players. Communication should be subtle, symbolic, or cryptic for the gods, and more hands-on for those patrons, but always leave room for the player choice, of course. When a god, intervenes, make it rare, make it world-shaking, and consequential without solving the problem for your players. And finally, keep interactions sustainable. Escalate it gradually, tie them to player actions, and stay consistent with tone and personality. If you can follow these principles, you'll make the divine and the infernal, or whatever, feel alive, dangerous, and fascinating, without ever stealing the spotlight away from the people at your table that you care about. So, If you enjoyed this guide, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and leave a comment about your favorite way or your idea on how you would play gods, patrons in your campaigns. I'm always eager to learn more. And remember, whether you're running this epic quest or maybe a small town adventure, the right divine, fiendish, or whatever, that presence can make your world unforgettable. Don't forget that. This is James from the Dungeon Puffin. There are crows everywhere, and they're driving me crazy. I don't know if it picked up on the video or not. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But I only have so much time today because I gotta go pick my daughter up from school. Later.